Welcome to the Global Supply Chain Marketing Group, presented by Supply Chain Brain Media. I'm Ralph Henderson. This is a professional development webinar series built for supply chain marketing professionals, leaders, and the folks they report to. These are the people who are responsible for driving growth, building trust, and creating demand in a rapidly changing market. On this show, we tackle the strategies, shifts, and the realities shaping the future of supply chain marketing. Before we jump in, a quick note. This is an interactive session, so please, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A area of the webinar, and we'll get to as many of those today live as we can. If we don't get to your question, fear not, we'll get to it afterwards, we promise. In today's reality, AI has changed the game and it's made marketing mandatory. The old playbook of relying on referrals and trade shows alone or just a lean sales team to carry the load, not going to cut it anymore. AI has made content easier to create, campaigns faster to launch, and execution more accessible than ever. But it's also created more noise, more competition, and more pressure to stand out. So, what does that mean for our lean marketing teams in the supply chain space? What actually works? And where does the human strategy still matter most? To unpack it, I'm joined by two powerhouse marketing professionals. Mia Mazzal, co-founder of Talento, and Jackie Briggs, Talento's marketing director. Welcome. Together,
Welcome.
we're going to break down where AI helps, where it doesn't, and what modern supply chain marketing teams need to do now to build trust, their pipeline, and long-term growth. All right, enough from me. Let's get on from theory to throughput and get into what's really driving supply chain marketing today. Mia, Jackie, Mike's all yours.
Thank you so much, Ralph. I'm super excited to be here. Hey, Jackie, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Mia? Excited
Uh,
to be here with you.
Me too. I'm glad to have another face on here with me and get to talk about some exciting things like marketing and I. So let's jump in.
Awesome. Let's get it started.
Let's do this thing. So, Jackie, I know that you've been in marketing for a while now, and you've been able to see the different phases as we've changed over time. And so, maybe you can even give us some insight. But as we all know, marketing really is a very broad term, right? Everyone's got their own interpretation of it. And specifically in supply chain logistics, marketing notoriously didn't exist. Or sometimes we saw it as a one-man show, one person wearing multiple hats. Is that something that, Jackie, you've been able to see in your time in marketing as well?
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to date myself with this a little bit, but I have been in marketing for over 15 years. I've been in supply chain marketing for going on 9 years now, right? What I knew as supply chain marketing when I first started has evolved and really in the last few years has exploded. But I think there was definitely a time that marketing for supply chains meant creating a one-off flyer, very low level sales support. And that just isn't the case today. It's very different.
I totally agree with that. I think that in the past as well, marketing was also led by our sales team to some extent. You know, the
Mhm.
buying process happened on the sales call, and today and day, less than 17% of the actual buying cycle is spent on the phone call with your sales rep. So it's that digital presence or everything before the call that's actually coming into play. Um, with that said, we also have this incredible buzzword of AI that's come to play. So, what before became a problem around content creation is now being adjusted because of volume, right? AI came and now average content is free to everybody. And so, the way to really stand out is to stop being average. But when we have this overwhelming amount of volume, like you can see in this film here. There's a kind of conveyor belt of sushi attacking them, and although at first it was manageable, it's something that became more and more and more, and they lost control. And so I think it kind of alludes to the point that if you have no focus and you have no ability to manage what's coming your way, you're gonna completely lose control. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think that's a good point. And, as a marketer, we always knew like the rule of seven, right? That a customer or prospect has to see your message at least 7 times for them to even, for it to even process, right? That has totally changed. It's really evolved. We are all inundated with so much content these days, right? If you think about it, like you're on your phone probably way more than you want to be. And we're all just given so many messages all the time, whether it's your email, whether it's, on social media or any other avenues or channels that you as a person go to. So now seeing something 7 times is just a drop in the bucket. They've updated some of those stats, and it's not a perfect science, but it can take 10 to 20 touch points just to get through that message now, and
Wow.
60 plus when you're talking B2B. So for a logistics marketer, it is so, so, so important to really, create things. And then we see AI can amplify that, as you see with the conveyor belt. But it's not only about that piece, right? So much of it is about creating something that people are going to remember. It reminds me a little bit of when Wendy's, again, dating myself, back in the day, came out on Twitter, well, now X, but on Twitter at the time, and they were doing something that was a little bit different. They were posting comments, really using comments as a channel, which was unheard of back at that time. Um, Comments to just respond to brands and really create a voice and cut through the noise of what people were seeing that day. And they were funny, they were kind of clapping back. So it would really created a stir. Ultimately became a PR opportunity because they were getting headlines for that stuff. We'll have to ask them if the PR piece was intentional or just happened. But again, like that's good marketing, is being able to create that brand voice, and I think that it's hard to do that when you're just creating things on that conveyor belt, right? When AI is just pushing it out, when you don't have the building blocks behind it to create things with AI that are actually who you are as a brand. Like if you don't know that, you're never going to be successful. It's just going to be a conveyor belt of what everyone is seeing. We're all on LinkedIn right now, and we see the same posts over and over and over. They start, in a certain way. They've got the emojis, like everyone knows, oh, that's AI. And so that's who we don't want to be. We all don't want to be the ones that are just a bunch of AI fluff, a bunch of AI slop, whatever you want to call it, coming out of your brand constantly. That's not creating a voice, and that's not doing anything for your company. Um,
Oh, I
some,
think that,
Mhm,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was just
No,
going to say some cool things that we have seen recently, that came out of some of the soccer that's happening right now. I'm sure everyone is watching. One of the ones is
World Cup.
T-Pain.
Woo.
Oh yeah. T-Pain kept getting tagged by DoorDash on X, right? They were saying T-Pain's, doing this amazing play. Go T-Pain, it's all you. Well, it wasn't T-Pain, right? It was Tim Payne, who is a soccer player. And they had T-Pain commenting back, and they had him, really in the conversation. And ultimately that was a strategic piece. That was an ad. They did an ad with T-Pain. It all came together, and, now, but it created a big stir. That was more
Mhm.
orchestrated probably than some of the more organic Wendy stuff back in the day. But it's a really good thing to say, like, AI isn't going to give you that. If you put something into AI and say, okay, now give me, some information, like that's not what you're going to get. So it's still just so important to have a strong brand voice, to have the people behind the brand that are really pushing it forward in unique and innovative ways, and not just relying on AI to do everything.
Yeah, totally. And I think you bring up a lot of good points there. And one that resonated with me is the fact that you even mentioned branding. A lot of times in logistics, we don't really think about marketing. And if we do think about marketing, we're thinking about leads, right? We're thinking about people that actually filled a form, came to my door, and are booking a call. And that's actually a long-term play. And it's very different than branding. But today and day, where everybody can get forms out and anybody can fill out a form, you need to get in front of the right audience, and you need to get in front of them through marketing. Because again, it's not your sales call that is the first time they see you. It's that X post that went viral viral where they accidentally tagged T-Pain or instead of Tim Payne. And so even in that, you're starting to get to know DoorDash and their brand and their voice, and they're getting in front of people before their competitors are. And maybe it's not generating leads, but it's still creating that context, that familiarity, that credibility that what you mentioned, AI can't do. So when AI is in the game and everybody has access to AI, the difference between you and I is us, is the actual human involved. So let's hop into some hot take discussions.
All right, let's do it.
Awesome. I know we've talked a little bit about AI and I know we talked about branding and strategy, but one of the key points that I wanted to ask is what comes first? Should I be focusing on the actual strategy piece? Should I be focusing on executing? Is content the most important piece? Or what do you think about that, Jackie?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we get this a lot, right? And it depends on a lot of things. And I wouldn't say that there's a cookie cutter response, but what I will say is that, strategy and execution are two completely different jobs. They're completely different roles, and it depends on what your goals are. I think a lot of, marketing executives that come into a role, and I've seen it time and time again, a company in supply chain says, okay, you know what? We need marketing. Like we've seen it work other places. We need to invest in it. Let's hire a VP of marketing tomorrow. They're going to change everything. They're going to make it perfect. Well, that's kind of a trap because if you have no marketing, no support, no infrastructure, and you just bring in this VP, their expectations are not going to be at all aligned to the role. Like you cannot bring in a high level strategic person and expect them to execute across all disciplines of marketing. I mean, truly talk about this all day and a little plug for next webinar, but we are going to go into how you build the right actual, a job description to find the person that you're looking for. But again, it's all about understanding what your goals as an organization are for marketing. You
I
talked about branding, and that's so important. Like, I always the first question I ask when I talk to any client or customer is like, what do you want? Do you want branding or do you want lead generation? And as a marketer, these are kind of watered down versions. But when we're talking to people who don't have a really like strong understanding of what those are, I would say branding is building trust, creating that long-term influence within the industry. And lead generation is I want 20 leads that my sales team can go call tomorrow, right?
Mhm.
And so being able to understand like what your goals are is really what's going to help you not only hire the right person, but actually move the needle when it comes to marketing. Like just throwing everything against the wall, just doing like content here and social media there, that has no strategy behind it. And ultimately, it's not going to work, right? There's no branding, there's no building blocks, and there's nothing that is actually going to create a long-term brand for you.
Yeah.
So, I think if you're really looking for what do you need, sometimes like a mid-level marketer that can help if you have a strong vision for what you want for marketing, a mid-level marketer is great. If you are going to hire a VP, be ready to hire at least 1 to 2 executors to help execute on their strategy and vision.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one
Yeah.
of the questions as well is what comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
And so are
Yeah.
you going to get the strategist first and then later on funnel down what needs to be created and the action? Or are you going to start first with the person that can produce? But if they're producing around no strategy, then is that a good investment or a waste of time?
Yeah.
I'll let you decide.
So we do have a couple of questions. Before we get to those, Jackie, what I always find fascinating with the branding and the lead gen is when I'm on the selling side of the desk, it's all about lead gen. When I'm on the
Mhm.
buying side of the desk, it's all about brand. What I
Yep.
have to do as a professional marketing person is put myself into the buyer's mind, right, and create that brand. So that's a really good point you brought up. Okay, a couple of quick questions for you from the audience. Number one, and Jackie, I'll give this to you.
Okay.
We're a small logistics company with one marketing person. What are the first three KPIs we should focus on?
That's a great question. So I think for a smaller and a newer company, the first KPIs need to be really, really simple. A lot of people will come in and be like, okay, one marketing person, now we've got a whole marketing thing that we should be doing. They might know some buzzwords about it, or they may have really high expectations. And while that's wonderful, there is like a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built, right? So they might be working on building the website, the brand, the systems, the content, and you can't have sophisticated marketing attribution immediately for that. So again, I would turn it inward and say, okay, well, do we even know what we're looking to achieve when you're looking to create KPIs? And then once you do, then you can really create some ones around. These are like some more general ones, but again, you'd kind of have to look at what you specifically want to do. So I would say work completed. Is the marketer consistently completing the work tied to the company that's most important, right? Once you've identified what you want to do you want branding? Do you want lead generation? Now, is the work that's getting done actually matching with what you want? Um,
Right.
meaningful
Begin with the
audience.
end.
Meaningful audience response. So are the people that you want to be taking action? And again, you really have to have an understanding of who your audience is, and that might be something that the marketer first has to identify with you. And then, are you getting a meaningful response from these people? If you have a bunch of people who have no interest in what you're doing, looking at your stuff, like you could have a million views, that means nothing if they're not the right people. I always tell my team, we're only as good as our lists, right? I'd rather get in front of 10 of the right people than 1,000 of the wrong people because that's never going to move the needle. Like, I'm like, oh, here's all these great marketing qualified leads, but if they never convert, then what's the point?
Yeah.
And then growth and measurement. So if you're, a smaller organization and you haven't had a lot of marketing in the past, I think that one of the KPIs is starting to be able to measure things. Long-term KPIs would be using those measurements to have KPIs, right? But you have to put those building blocks in place. So those would be the three KPIs I would kick it off with.
I love it. I love that last one. I mean, look, if you don't have any, a good KPI is to create KPIs. I
Absolutely.
love that. All right, next one's for you, Mia. How can I tell during an interview whether a candidate actually uses AI effectively versus just saying they do?
Yeah, I think that's a really valid question and one that I actually have to deal with on my own interviews. And I would actually even take it a step back and kind of tie it to what Jackie said and ask yourself, do you want them to use AI? And if so, in what facet? Do you want this team member to be using it for content creation, for analysis, for strategy, for execution? Because they're all very, very different things. And once you have clarity in terms of where you would want them to be using it, then actually ask them to give you examples. It's very different if someone's just naming a tool or explaining how they use that tool. I have ChatGPT. Yeah, I use ChatGPT, but that doesn't mean that you understand to any extent where, how, why I use ChatGPT. So referencing an actual example, maybe even telling a story about the last prompt or the last chat that they had, and even showing and explaining in what facet that was used. I think that's essential. And then breaking up the difference between strategy and execution, right? You want to make sure that you're understanding when it's being used to kind of brainstorm and think and understand what are best practices and data-driven decisions. And then execution is a whole other component of what we talked about before. Content creation, volume, just getting in front of people, but that doesn't mean you're necessarily getting in front of the right people. So I think that, again, really find out how do you want them to use AI, and from there, biggest suggestion would be to ask for specific examples. And with that said, I think that it all goes really, really hand in hand to what we've been talking about thus far is that in this world where we're all saturated and we're getting so much information, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just filtering the thousands of messages I have. 500 unread LinkedIn messages, Facebook that I don't even open at all, and God knows how many I have on there, LinkedIn, emails, missed phone calls. It's too much. So, how are we going to stand out from those phone calls? What are the things that make us kind of highlight us and instead of this saturation that we see all around us? I think one of the biggest things we've been talking about is brand consistency and brand voice. So, something that we've been really resonating with, especially between Jackie and I, have been talking a lot about this offline as well, is that brand consistency is now a moat. It's what makes you and I different. It's what stands out between my competitors. We mean we're in supply chain. How many companies do exactly the same thing and their differentiator is that they're personalized, that they're boutique, their service. So how are we going to communicate that through marketing when our first touch point with them, again, is not the sales call? It's the 7 to 55 content or touch moments that you've gotten in front of them beforehand. And that usually comes through as a LinkedIn post, or maybe as a marketing email, or maybe even a trade show visit. I think that that's something we hear about a lot. And people ask, is there actually ROI from trade shows? And again, it does depend on your goal, but if the differentiator is the human component and the best way to emphasize and capitalize on that humanity is being face to face with a human, this is where I would argue that there might be more value in putting in time to the relationship as opposed to putting in time to posting 5 more times on LinkedIn this week. What do you think about that, Jackie?
I think it's a great point and it's really, really true. That brand consistency, being able to pop up on different channels and people know exactly who it is because you have consistency. And I'm not saying being boring, I'm not saying create the same thing over and over, but I'm saying take what is the best differentiator about your organization, and really turn that into who you are and make it really clear. I like to tout that the best thing about Talento as a brand is our people, and I absolutely mean it. I've worked at tons of places and we've got great people. They perform well on camera. If you know us, you know that Mia is always on camera, like she is right now, right? She's at the trade shows. She is the brand, right? And that creates really a niche and it carves us out as a differentiator because we have these wonderful people that are able to showcase who we are as a brand, and do that across LinkedIn, to do it on the website, to do it in person. It really is a differentiator. So look for those in your
Yep.
brand. How can you stand out?
Yeah, and I think that a huge piece there as well is that you need to be top of mind. I mean, when you're reaching out to people, the majority of the time, and I believe, forgive me if I'm wrong, but numbers around 70 to 80%, they're not ready to buy and they're never actually going to be part of the buying journey. But when the timing is right and they're ready to make a decision, they're going to go straight to the person they've already have in mind that they've already Googled at least 7, 8 times previous to. And so again, the first time they saw you was all of your digital content, your website, your LinkedIn post number 5 that you talked about the bird that landed on your balcony last week, right? And that's not where they're learning necessarily about Talento's solutions, but they're learning about our voice, our credibility, the way that we provide service and what matters to us. And that's what sells. It's the people that sell. And you need that humanity from the people, the branding that we've created to also speak to the brand, right? Because the business is also going to start to create its own voice, and that's the whole point of branding. But it's a long game, and I think especially in logistics and supply chain, where we want everything now, we want everything yesterday, we want everything
Mhm.
fast, and we think that the fastest route is to go towards lead generation and just having those forms filled, when the reality is, especially now with AI in the game, the only way to stand out is to be consistent. And I'll emphasize one last thing, that when we start creating, you can't stop. Once you're on LinkedIn, once you're sending out an email, you can't stop. Imagine if you were in the middle of a sales cycle and as they're asking you for pricing, you just ghost them. You completely lost that opportunity, and more so than the opportunity, the credibility. They now don't
Mhm.
trust you and they now don't want to go back to you. You now lost that first impression and that first shot. So it's super, super important that once you pick up the ball, you continue going from there, or else you might cause more negative consequences as opposed to if you never started to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, where AI does help is it amplifies that. Once you do have that really strong, consistent voice, then you use AI to really push it out to every channel, to help you craft it in a better way to every channel, right? To make things go faster and go better. Like AI by no means is bad. Mia and I are huge advocates. We use
Huge.
AI all day, every day. But we also are really, really careful about how we use it, and we use it in a way that isn't going to make us sound like everyone else and isn't going to make us look like everyone else and isn't going to make us function like everyone else, because That way, it's like you said, you might as well not have done it because it's just not going to hit your audience and it's not going to make an impact.
Totally agree. Awesome. I also think that one of the key pieces to amplifying and don't dilute is project your voice, right? So maybe even how World Cup is a great example. And now a lot of brands, if no one's kept up so far, are going pretty viral. And for this
Mhm.
kind of like anti-marketing campaign to some extent, because their logos are being covered up since they're not actually sponsoring the World Cup, but their logos are so recognizable, their brand is so recognizable that they're actually covering the letters, but we're still able to see the actual format. For example, Heinz. You cover Heinz on the bottle, but you still know it's Heinz based off the lettering, the shapes, the colors, the everything. And so it's those things that leave an impact, that stand out, that you don't even realize you're unconsciously remembering who these brands are because they're showing up in so many aspects of your life that it's just behind the scenes. It's like white noise, but you remember the white noise. Your body does.
Yes, it's very much like the Talento logo over your right shoulder.
Yeah.
Even if I didn't see the name, I would know who it was, right?
Oh.
So I agree with you there. We got a couple more great questions that have come in. First one, Jackie, for you. What should a realistic 30, 60, 90-day plan look like for a newly hired logistics supply chain marketer?
Yeah, so that can be one of the biggest challenges, right? When you're trying to look at a new marketer and say, okay, how do I measure this? And it's not always easy. We already talked about it a little with the KPIs. So these are just like some framework as to what I think a good 30, 60, 90-day plan would be that would fall for a new marketing hire. So, first 30 days, learning your business. It's so, so, so important for marketing to be so integrated with sales, so integrated with operations, so integrated with what your company does and how it differentiates itself, that I would really give that first chunk of time to making sure that you're doing your due diligence. Sit with them, talk to them. You're only going to get as much out of a marketer as you give them back, right? If they don't understand your business, if they don't understand your audience, or if you haven't defined those things, that can be part of what they do, right? Create those while they talk to you, but you have to give them the time to learn your business in and out, and you're going to get so much more back from it. When
Yeah.
you look at when you look from the 31 to 60 days, I would really prioritize building the foundation. So again, by then you should have spent some time with them. They should be defining who's your ICP, your ideal customer profile. What's your core messaging? What are your priority channels? If you're B2B, do you need to be on, you know, TikTok? No, probably not. I wouldn't recommend it. um, Content themes, right? What kind of content is going to resonate with your ICP? The lead process and how you'll hand things off and how you guys will work together. Those would really be the biggest things I would focus on then. And then the last 61 to 90 days, launch, measure, and improve. So I would say that's the time that you're really wanting to see. Let's execute one campaign really well, right? A targeted webinar or maybe a customer focused content series, account based marketing campaign, even sales enablement refresh. Maybe you're really starting out fresh and you don't have anything to give. That's the time where you can now see if that learning phase has really translated into how they present your organization to an outside audience. And so that's really the 30, 60, and 90-day plan that I would look at to have an idea if this is going to be a fit or not.
Yeah, and this is with all due respect to this entire webinar, but if you just listen to that last 5 minutes, you have just paid for the admission into this thing. That was really, really well done. And supply chain marketing people love that roadmap, right? That ABC. So that was great, Jackie. Next question for you, Mia. What are the biggest red flags that indicate a marketing candidate may be struggling in the logistics or supply chain environment?
Yeah, I think we've talked about it, and I think a lot of the audience knows about this, but this industry moves fast and doesn't wait for anybody. And you need to know your SHIT or you need to get out. And so I think that one of the key things is asking that person, how are they being measured before? And how did they see success? Because a thing I noticed, and a little bit of my history, this might help, is I learned marketing just by doing. And it started my very first function in this industry was creating posts for Instagram and for LinkedIn. So I thought marketing was color work, font, design, the pretty piece of it. And marketing is so much more than that. So as simple as asking somebody, what does success mean to you? And if they're measuring by clicks, by impressions, by likes, by followers, those things, then they're not really understanding the actual business impact. And that's where marketing needs to be focused because as Jackie mentioned too, marketing and sales are best friends and they need to be working for the same mission. And your business needs to be bringing in money and revenue. And if you're not bringing that in, well, then you don't have a business at all. So although marketing has many components, and one of them, yes, is design, you do need to get to the root that design has a bigger impact. And we can't just measure how pretty is your post. It needs to be more so, how does that post actually make an impact for the larger business? Let's get back into it. I love the discussion questions. Alrighty. So I think that it's important to talk about what Jackie mentioned before too, which is AI is not bad. It can be used in a way that maybe can harm you, but more so, or more often than not, it's used in a way that can help you, right? And so you just need to be strategic and very targeted with how, when, why, where you're using it to make sure you're getting the outcomes that you would like to see. Again, it's what we talked about before. We have so much information that we have to filter it out, that we have to figure out what strategy, what angle works for us. Every business is different, every audience is different, every person is different. There's about 6 to 10 decision makers in every buying journey. There's at least 12 searches before engaging with you. It's those different people that we need to figure out each one how they behave and how to get to them. So where I would stay away from AI, generic content, inconsistent content. We talked about this before. Average content is now free. Anybody can access AI and can create a video, can create posts for every single day of the week and have it posted on its own. And that's not going to drive the needle because the majority are doing that right now and it's not bringing anything through their doors. Inconsistency. We talked about this as well. You post for a month every single day and then you don't post for 3 months. All the momentum you build, it just crashed and burned and went into the other direction. So it's super important that you have an infrastructure and a goal that has a timeline that is repetitive, is consistent, and leverage AI for consistency. It's a tool that is used to automate processes that are repetitive, that are monotonous.
Monotonous. You got
Thank you, monotonous.
it.
And so we should be able to implement that in those spaces. So now this person isn't spending time posting every single day at 10 a.m., but they're actually spending their time making sure the post went out and actually analyzing how the post performed so we can make next week's post even better. A loss of focus. Don't use AI for your creativity, for your idea. Like the World Cup branding ideas that we've been talking about. It's not something that AI would have thought of. It's something that a human would have created and did create at the end of the day. So you need to make sure that we are aligned, that the tool is aligned with what your strategy is as well. The tool comes after. Same with the chicken and the egg. You don't start with AI and then you figure out your strategy from there. First, you need to have clarity on your strategy and your direction, and then you understand which tool is going to help aid that relationship. And last but not least, on reasons to avoid AI or where to not use it and be careful more so, is judgment, right? AI is not a human. AI's one of their weaknesses is actually being able to make interpretations and have some of that human judgment. You can have it maybe play devil's advocate with you and ask you questions from a perspective or a lens that you hadn't thought about before, but at the end of the day, you're still the one making that judgment call. So as much as possible, use AI to free up the other functions of your day so then you can spend more time on the judgment. Jackie, anything you would add for the red flags? And maybe you want to share a little bit about some of the green flags and how we do use AI today and day to see some success on our marketing team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the first red flag is so important. It's easy for the marketing team to not be super connected with sales and to create some generic stuff using AI and push it out. But again, that's where that alignment comes in because sales is talking to their customers every single day. As we know in logistics, things are constantly changing. It's a very fluid industry. There are crazy things happening right now with rates and all that good stuff. And so, depending obviously on who your audience businesses, you really need to understand what is their pain point. And now it's like not even what is their general pain point, because again, AI can create that. How to go above and beyond is what is their pain point today? How is it relevant today? And how do we be the first to get it in front of people? Again, we're not expecting everyone on here to be like creating the World Cup level stuff. It's a different audience, it's a different brand, but you can pull some of what they're doing, which is going back, it's almost back to the basics, being creative. A lot of marketers are creative, and over using AI for the creativity piece is not the right move. You want to put that creativity back on and use that AI to take off those monotonous tasks. Like Mia said, you can use AI to not only post it for you, and get rid of some of the monotony of going through and doing it, but also when's the best time to post? When is our audience the most active? Like use it for that stuff. Pull the creativity back into your team and let them do what they do best.
Totally. And I think that when you mentioned the cycle, it's something that comes to my mind all the time. We've now had AI to free up our time. So now we're all having content, we're all pushing volume. And so now the difference between you and I is that I have a human on my team. And so now it's kind of, we went from humans to AI and back to humans being the
Yes.
differentiator and needing them on our team. So I think it just goes to show that humans are never gonna go away. We're going to need that. We are rooted in connection. That is the literally the biological foundation of a human. And so we need that for selling as well. We need that for marketing. We need that to create connection. Pathos, egos, logos, those are all the basics as well that have not gone away. Maybe they've changed in how we use them or what's more important than the other. And that's also very dependent on your audience, on your channel. We're talking about supply chain here very broadly, but within supply chain, whether you're a broker, whether you're a carrier, whether you're a manufacturer, your audience is different, which means your channel is different. Their behavior is different. So your strategy is going to be different. So when you start to build a team, and if you're going to hire in-house or if you're going to outsource, that's all going to be different. One big question I also ask myself, and I know Jackie, you and I have this conversation, is do we hire an expert, in an area that we don't know? Do we hire in-house? Do we hire two people for, more junior level or mid-level for the price of one high-level expert? Do we outsource a project temporarily or maybe even nearshore it? And I even argue that experts don't exist to some extent, specifically in the realm of AI.
Mhm.
Every single day there's something new, or Claude came out with something new, or there is a new concept or a new idea on how to implement it, or a new native integration, or anything along those lines, and it completely changes how we're using it. More so specifically in our digital presence. People aren't going to Google for their answers. They're going to AI for their answers. And so where you want to position yourself is going to be very different every single day, depending on how our process, our buying journey is affected by this context as well. So I would argue that there are no experts, but there are people that maybe spend more time in staying up to date and therefore maybe know a little bit more than you in specific niches. And that's just literally because of the time in one has in a day.
I think that's a great point. And then going into some of these green flags, AI has done a lot of great things to move the industry forward. It's actually crazy to think that, while we were all using like a little bit of AI or a little bit of, making things transformed a little bit, like it's increased so much in the last few years. Now you can get access, you can get in front of so many people more than you could before, right? You can pull data, you can see where people are, you can do so much more. And AI has really amplified that. And you can, of course, do it much faster, right? People used to start with a blank page. I started as a creative writer and in journalism, and it was a blank page. Not so much anymore. Right now, we really do have a lot of jumping off points. We can use AI to accelerate it. We have, our brand in AI, so we're able to create content faster. And then we can also streamline things. We were talking about those repetitive tasks, right? there are a lot of tools and things that we can use to not just streamline the processes, but also make sure that those are optimized by looking at all of the data and then using that data within it to create an algorithm that aligns with our audience. And then magnifying. Once you have that strong, strong foundation, you're able to really increase that reach, go everywhere. When you have those great ideas, you can just magnify it across channels. You can get more out there faster, all of those things, more out there faster and in front of more people.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that with what you were just saying, AI actually gives us the opportunity to make a better strategy because we have more insights and more visibility into what works and what doesn't. So it's really on me to make sure that I'm actually reading that information and utilizing it to make informed decisions and tailor my strategy. But I also think a lot of people, and it's no one's fault, but we want to set it and leave it, we want it to be done. Once you have it set up, my strategy's aligned, I have my post rolling every single week, and that's it. I'm ready from now until 2030. No, that's just not true. There should be a consistent analysis, at the very least, a monthly analysis to see performance, and that can only be pulled with larger trends and larger pattern data, right? Because I have a lot of my opinion, qualitatively around what is a pretty post and what's not, but I need to look at the actual numbers and progress. And this is, again, more so than just clicks, likes, impressions, but the actual conversion, the actual visibility and understanding. Our buyers are educating themselves on their
Mhm.
own journey and experience based off the content that we're pushing out. So we need to make sure that that content resonates enough for them to read it, and secondly, understand it so they can really understand our brand, right? And that voice that we've been talking about that is the moat in the industry.
Yeah, and you keep talking about the buyer's journey, which is something that I feel strongly, and it might be a hot take. I know we're not on that title slide right now, but um, at the least, the buyer's journey has changed, and at most, it's dead, right? Buyers are touching so many different points right now. They are going to spend a minute on LinkedIn. Attributions are not as clean as they used to be. Like, there's just so much happening.
Yeah.
And so, for the marketers on the line, really remember that. It used to be the rule of seven, right? You see the seven touch points. It's gone. It's all out the window. A lot of what we know as marketers is changing in real time, and it's super exciting. It's super amazing. But it's a time to be dialed in, and it's a time to really, get ahead by understanding what's happening right now, particularly in logistics, how the buyer's journey has changed, where everyone is living. I argue to say mostly on LinkedIn and specific areas when you're looking B2B. But you really have to do the research and you have to stay on top of it if you want to continue to be successful.
Totally agree. Awesome.
Okay, man. You know what? I am so glad there's going to be an on-demand link for this show for everybody watching because they're going to have to watch it a couple of times. You guys are coming at us really, really quick, but that's good because we need to have a lot of this information. I call it fire hydrant training, right? We're getting more on us than in us, but it'll soak in over time. So we need to make sure that we know we will get an on-demand link. You will be able to watch this. You will be able to share it. But right now, I want to bring the audience in again, and we want to do Q&A. So this is your opportunity once again. Submit any questions. We'll get to as many of those today live as time permits. If we don't get to it, look, we'll capture it. We'll get back to you. We promise. We know how important this is for you guys, but I want to get to some of these that have come in. So let's get started. The first one, Mia, is for you. How has AI fundamentally changed what good marketing looks like inside of a logistics supply chain company over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think that that really summarizes a lot of what we've been talking about thus
Okay.
far. 5 years ago, you didn't need to be online or on Google to be an option. And now, if you have no presence online, then you are not even on the table. So having a Google presence, posting, actually content that speaks to the buyer is the foundation. You can't just be in front of their face. You need to be in front of them with something that matters to them. And I think AI, because of the volume burst, right? Because average content is now free, now we need to be able to make sure that our content is not average, that it's actually resonating with them in that that specific moment.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. This next question, Jackie, is for you, and this comes from somebody who's obviously experienced this, so really important. And that is, why do so many supply chain companies or logistics companies hire marketing generalists and still end up kind of disappointed with their results?
Yeah, so I think that this one is a really important question because the problem is not that generalists are bad, right? Generalists are needed in a lot of capacities. But when you're in a small company, you may only have a generalist, and that's valuable. But it can't be one person expected to do everything, right? That's different. And so you want to make sure that, again, it falls back to the business to understand what they want from marketing and hire the right role that's going to do that and have a really, really clear roadmap of how success is going to be determined. Because if you hire someone that's in a niche, like they're going to know, they're going to walk in knowing, okay, yeah, I'm a graphic designer. I'm going to design things graphically, right? Like that's very simple. When you hire a generalist and then you give them, you know, social media and you give them events and you give them lead generation and you give them all of these huge disciplines, like those are totally different roles with totally different skill sets. And they may be really great at some of those, they may be not as good at some of the other ones. And so that's where, again, not to keep plugging webinar too, but I don't want to throw more at you, but where it's so important when you create a job description, even if it is a generalist description, to be really, really clear what the expectations will be, not only with who's going to join, but with yourself. You cannot hire one generalist and think that, okay, like Mia said, wash your hands. I'm done till 2030. Like that is not how marketing works. But it's a great place to start.
Cool. So let's tag on that question then. When you look at high performing marketers today in the supply chain space, what capabilities separate the good from the average?
Yeah, that's also a another great question about performance. And I think it really comes down to, how people are using the tools that they're given. There's so much out there and there's so much available. And as marketers, now is really the time to make sure that you are aligned with your business, that you're doing your end of the deal, right? You're going to sales, you're interviewing them, you're making sure that what you create is aligned with what's happening in the market and it's aligned with what your customers are looking for. You don't want to create the generic stuff like we've been talking about, just hammering it home again. Brand consistency is so important. High performers understand that, and they understand that tying marketing to revenue is the most important piece. You can't just walk in and make things pretty. That is not what marketing is about. And if that's what you think it's about, then it's time to get updated with the times because marketing used to be the one where like if there was layoffs, marketing's first on the cutting room, we're out
Yep.
of there. Like, and that's
Yeah,
not the case anymore because people are understanding that marketing is a revenue driver. And I
Yep.
would
right.
even say, and if you don't listen to anything else, if you're a marketer on the line, this is what I would tell you. Educating your stakeholders and Jim from sales and every single person, educating them on what you're building and why you're building it is half the job when you first start. Because if you can't do that, they are never going to buy into what you're doing and give you the tools and support to be successful.
That's
Totally.
right. And you have to have a seat at the table. And we've talked
Yes.
about that before.
Yes.
So good for you for telling them that. All right, me, I need to put on your executive hat for just a second and speak to your peers in this audience. What's the biggest hiring mistake that you see with supply chain companies when they're making the marketing job descriptions?
Yeah, a lot of mistakes. One maybe being that the role itself has no title because there is no order or orientation or direction. And so from there, understanding that your strategist and your executioner are two completely different roles. And if you're going to hire a director of marketing like a Jackie and expect her to also be the one creating the content, then you're out of your mind to be respectful. So genuinely, I think that it really breaks down to understanding what is your goal in hiring, what is going to be your first step, because there are many pieces and a person is not a department. You know, when you're hired for marketing, marketing has content, it has PR, it has socials, it has copywriting, it has 100 million different things inside of it. So you need to,
Yes.
exactly, you need to choose
There's
one.
all five of these things.
Yep, exactly. So choose your orientation. It's what we've been talking about, right? As long as you have clear direction and strategy, then you can use that as your foundation to kind of break down into detail what functions exactly you need in that role. And it can't just be general, I need marketing.
Right. No, that's perfect. All right, Jackie, this is a good one. Very sensitive. As AI makes content creation easier, which we've talked about, where
Mhm.
does human judgment become so valuable these days?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, human judgment is even more valuable with the addition of AI, right? Because um, we can get 20 generic topics quickly, easily, and we've talked about this a bunch on here, but anyone can do that. And so I think when it comes to, talking again to the sales team, making sure you're super aligned with not only what's happening in the industry, but what's happening right now. What are the biggest points in the very moment for what your audience is going through? And then how can you be creative in communicating those? We talked about the World Cup, how they covered the logos. So they made all of their logos on Twitter look the same. You really have to look for those opportunities, and AI just isn't going to do that for you. It has to be that stuff that's going to break through the noise, the stuff that's really going to like take what's the best about your brand and amplify it for you. But you have to find those things. You have to find the diamonds in the rough.
Yep.
Wow, yeah. So here's another good one for you, Mia. If you're building a marketing team or hiring marketing right now from scratch in the supply chain space, what would your first hire look like?
Yeah. If I didn't know where to go and I needed some direction orientation, my suggestion would be to hire a strategist. Hire someone that can help guide out and build out what everything that Jackie said on the 30, 60, 90-day plan, right?
Mhm.
Who is your ICP? What channels are they in? Which channels am I going to use? Where am I going to focus my efforts? Because now I can understand the other roles that I need. If my goal is to create content on social media, but then I'm going to now hire a marketing analyst whose sole job is to analyze data and patterns, there's no fit there, right? Or if I want to be on social media, but I don't have a graphic designer on my team, well, that's going to be a gap as well. But the only way to understand all those pieces is if I know exactly where I want to go. So the very first step is to have a strategist. And a piece of advice that I'd recommend is consider outsourcing or nearshoring. There are other platforms out there where you can use a strategist or an expert for a certain amount of time to get that baseline and then now hire the executioners. And that's
Mhm.
also an option.
Right. No, I really like that. Okay. Man, oh man, I hate this part because we're almost out of time. We have time for one final
Oh
question.
no.
I know. These always go by faster than we think. But I am going to ask this one final question because I do think it's important, and me, it's to you as well. So,
Yep.
for companies looking to build a more effective marketing function, you talked about the strategist being the first hire. So, give them a little bit of an idea of the focus as they go forward on how they do this as we come out of session one of this series.
Yeah. I think that if you take anything away from today is that you need to sit down with your stakeholders and your team, and that is not just marketing, but also sales and the people who are part of the process of putting energy and money behind an effort and a joint objective, right? So get everybody in the same conversation and sit down and ask yourselves, what is success? And how are we going to measure success? I think those are the two most important pieces. From there, you're able to identify who, how, and why, all the W questions. And last but not least, that's where you ask yourself, what technology and what tools are we going to use to help make it all happen? So, first, get all the people together, open the conversation, ask how you're measuring success, who you're talking to, all the W's, and then lastly, fourth piece being the tech and the tool, how that's going to aid the relationship. That's what I would recommend.
Right. No, I love that. And as an executive, I will say to the executives watching this, you have a responsibility to be a part of this. At the end of the day, it really is too important for you not to be involved in that. So thank you guys for that.
Yeah, and you
Oh my
can't just do
goodness.
it once and stop, right? The very
No,
last thing
that's
I'll
right.
say is, as we talked about, brand consistency is the moat. So you need to be repetitive, you need to start, and you cannot stop. So keep it going, start your strategy, and go from there. If you need any help, we're here.
Yes, and they really are here. So please know that. So listen, thank you guys so much for today. My goodness gracious, what you've done to kick off this series is amazing. So we're building the foundation. We're understanding how AI is reshaping the supply chain marketing area, where it can create speed and efficiency, but where human strategy still makes all the difference. And this really is just the beginning. Because in session two, remember, and Jackie alluded to this earlier, we're going to get practical, right? We're going to be diving into how to build your AI enabled marketing team. We're going to go from job description to scorecard. Now, these folks are good. They are going to give us a scorecard at the end of that one to let us know how we're doing. That's going to be a working session to help us rethink these roles, the structure, the accountability needed to build this new modern function. That's happening on July the 2nd at 11 a.m. You're going to want to register. You can do that here or in the email we send you with the URL. Feel free to do it however you want. The next thing I want to talk about is Talento has been very kind to give us also an asset for you registering for today's session. This is the guide for logistics leaders looking to make marketing work. Please get this, download it, use it, reach out to them to get some help with it. It's packed with practical insights to help you connect, strategize, to execute, to start building marketing. Look, at the end of the day, when you guys do better, we all do better. So let's make sure we use the tools. A big thank you to Mia and Jackie for leading us today. My goodness gracious, you guys did such a wonderful job, and we really appreciate that. This is the Global Supply Chain Marketing Group presented by Supply Chain Brain Media, where strategy meets execution and marketing moves the market. Until next time, may the next 12 months be your best year ever.